Thanks, Anthony, for that shipper update this morning. Right now, it's time to welcome our next live guest. We have Greg Boring, who is the Vice President of Integrated Sales at Kenco. Greg, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you guys from Kenco, as always. And today's a really interesting conversation that I think we're about to get into, because it's a sector of supply chain that we don't talk often enough about, the big and bulky side of things. And it's kind of making things stickier than they should be in our supply chains, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Number one, they take up a whole lot more space, obviously, than smaller items that you are typically order from Amazon, whether it be clothing or books or shoes or things like that. But the challenge is customers are expecting the same type of service and visibility on those large items that they have grown accustomed to on smaller e-com items.
Greg, we like to talk about this story all the time here at FreightWaves. I've got a friend who loves to thrift shop, right? She absolutely loves it. And there's this one little thrift shop here in Chattanooga where it's right down the road from like a high-end, upscale furniture design shop. So she went into that thrift shop and found 12 or 13 brand new sofas that came from this high-end design shop because they were ordered, and 6 months later they finally came in, and they went straight from the back of a box truck straight to the thrift shop because the customer was like, I don't want these anymore, they're 6 months old, right? And this is exactly what we mean when we talk about this big and bulky items just not being delivered on time and not what the customer wants anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just that, but returns, to your point. When a manufacturer of appliances or lawn furniture or indoor furniture or other big and bulky items, when they're shipped into retailers, the percent of returns is really low. But just like everything else, when you're shipping directly to the end consumer, the product could get there and the color doesn't look quite right, or the refrigerator doesn't fit in the space that's available for it in the kitchen, or it could be a number of things. So you start having significant returns in the 20 to 40% range. And then that really creates a whole lot of havoc really back at the warehouse, as well as on those delivery trucks if they can't get the product off, and yet they still have more deliveries to make later in the day, for sure.
And Greg, when we're looking at all the different complications that can come up with moving these goods, how are you, or how would you recommend to really start to involve the customer with this as well? Because I can only imagine that sometimes there can only be, some miscommunications or things that could be communicated that could really alleviate situations altogether.
Yeah, and when you say customer, I'm gonna approach it from two different perspectives. Like from our perspective, our customer would be the company that's selling to the direct consumer. So I'll start with them. Number one, our customer or the manufacturer of those big and bulky items, they need to be clear on with their customers on what service they are offering. It could be just a traditional, what we call final mile delivery, where if they're having a sofa delivered, the driver may take it off of the truck and set it inside, but not unbox it, not put the legs on the bottom or things like that, and then leave, and the customer's left to do that work for themselves and take care of the boxing or the wrapping or whatever it came with. That's more of a final mile delivery, like I said. But then you've also got on the other side more of a white glove experience, where whether it's appliances or furniture or what have you, the delivery drivers take the product in. If it's appliances, typically they will hook them up, make sure they work, or they'll hang a TV, or they'll uncrate all the furniture and make sure everything looks good before they leave. So number one, the shipper has to decide what service they're offering their customers, and then make sure those customers are clear. And then to the true end customer, we try and ask as many questions as we can ahead of the delivery, just to make sure that I try and avoid any watch outs. Like if they're willing to measure their door frames just to make sure product will fit through, or openings in their kitchen for appliances, some phone calls ahead of time could really help head off a lot of those challenges. And we also like to try and over communicate, if you will, with the end customer, just to let them know in terms of the status of their product being delivered, when it's going to get there, just so that they're not sitting around waiting for half a day.
So let's talk a little bit about that choice between the final mile or the white glove service. And a lot of that sometimes comes down to cost when it comes to the end consumer making a decision of what they want. Can you talk a little bit about maybe pricing strategies if you're a company that's looking at offering the difference between final mile and white glove? And if you are a company that's looking at starting to offer those services, what can be the deciding factor on which way you go?
Yeah, good question. So I'll approach it from a couple different ways. The manufacturer of their products considers that customer experience on the delivery side really representative of the product they're buying. So if you have high-end furniture manufacturers, high-end appliance manufacturers, things like that, they are most likely, their clientele are most likely going to expect that type of white glove service. They may be ordering larger appliances or larger or more pieces of furniture or larger bathtubs or sinks or things like that. So those folks are going to be more expecting that type of white glove service. Whereas if it's more, I would say not on the higher end, like a lower to middle grade product, the customer may be just fine with the driver dropping the product off and leaving it on their doorstep or in their driveway or something to that effect. So the pricing really can be impacted a number of ways. What we find is on the final mile piece, oftentimes the final mile carrier may have product on their trailer for 5, 6, 7 different companies. So you could have exercise equipment and bikes and furniture and appliances and a lawn tractor all mixed together. And that's, again, more the typical final mile delivery where the driver just gets it to the home, and then it's up to the customer to take care of it from there. Those final mile deliveries are obviously less cost per delivery, I'll call it, because there's not as much time spent at the destination getting the product set up or unboxed and so forth. So that's more of a kind of an economic buy where a customer or a shipper, I should say, may be more willing to charge less for that delivery or perhaps even waive a delivery fee if a certain amount of product is purchased. Whereas on the white glove side, again, that may be more of a situation where if it's a high-end brand, then they, number one, may either have enough margin in their product where they can waive that delivery, or number two, they'll just add it into the purchase price of the product. So it's definitely a different pricing structure, whether if you want that white glove delivery versus final mile.
And Greg, the other question I kind of have on top of my mind is that visibility for those final customers. What does that look like in your world when you start to see, hey, these customers really want to know where everything is on the day of delivery, how far away is it, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say customers, but really it's all of us. We've gotten spoiled, right? Because typically e-com started with product that was shipped small parcel. So you could go to FedEx.com, UPS.com, DHL.com, whatever it may be, and you can track that package or that product that's coming to you, and where, if it's the day of delivery, you can get a rough idea when it's going to arrive. Well, customers are now expecting that same visibility for the big and bulky products as well. So and our typical trucking companies that primarily were doing business directly to other businesses, the expectations weren't that high. So, but when you start taking it to a customer's home, they're going to want that same ability to go to a website, find out when where the product is in the supply chain. Has it been shipped, from the origin distribution center, perhaps to the local delivery center? Has it been put out for delivery yet? And if so, where is that truck, and roughly when is it going to arrive? If a carrier tries to get into direct consumer without having robust systems that will allow the customer that visibility, but also, number two, be able to predict pretty accurately when the product's going to arrive, then that's going to be a less than optimal customer experience, and they're probably going to be getting a lot of phone calls from customers just wanting to get an update on where their shipment is. So yeah, the same expectations that we've all gained from purchasing smaller items and having them delivered parcel, those visibility expectations now apply to the big and bulky items as well, for sure.
And it's interesting to watch now, especially because when you're ordering these big and bulky items, you don't have that visibility, and you're like, well, I got to take an entire day off work now to be at home to ensure that this delivery gets there with somebody, right?
Well, I think most of us, that's kind of the way it used to be, right? Like if you were getting cable hookup, well, we'll be there between 9 and 1 or 1 and 5, and that was it. And I just think customers have gotten, as companies have tried to pay more attention to customers' needs and be easier to do business with. Given a 4-hour window is not going to cut it anymore. I know for our customers, we try and have our drivers call 30 minutes prior, typically before they're leaving their previous stop, just to make sure the customer will be home and knows that we're going to be there. But yeah, visibility and being on time and trying to inconvenience the customer as little as possible is definitely a key. It's almost table stakes anymore, as opposed to being as a differentiator.
Perfect. Well, Greg, thanks so much for joining us this morning. It's always great to have Kenco here with us. We'll be sure to check with you and get more insights to this final mile and Kenco situation. We're going to take a quick break right now, but we'll be right back with more FreightWaves Now.